I have a bit of a cold, and also I'm not recording this just after waking up, so my voice is not as deep as it was in the previous video. But yeah, thought I'd just address that before I actually get started on my analysis. For an episode about people feeling directionless or stuck on a path, a lot of small things happen that set the stage for the second half of the season. It's compelling in a narrative sense that all these pieces on the board are being spun around like there's a call and response type structure. But instead of a song picked from The Longest Johns, it's Right Round by Flow Rider, and instead of a shock video, it's people in wigs being spooky. This is clearly the case with the start having the Rivermen and Winterwolves unable to cross a bridge, and by the end, Christon Cole isn't able to cross a river. By pivoting and orbiting around each other, it creates a contrast for the bigger moves as things progress towards the end of the season. The pattern is not unique to this episode. The show, and the world beyond the show, loves spinning the roles around, like everyone's pulled into the various big action scenes with Jack Sparrow. I have to say that so many rotations without compromising the threads attaching scene to scene in the span of one episode is quite impressive. Despite the dizzying turntable, the plot still progresses at a good pace. Throughout the chronological events, some vindication is earned for the Greens over the Blacks. The Blacks are on the back foot from having been shot and almost dropping their croissant. However, not only does the episode start with the Greens successfully ambushing the Blacks' main host, it ends with the Gold Cloaks being slaughtered to the extent that not only do they not have any maidens, but they have no officers, so they're shit out of luck. This trajectory is adhered to with Allicent being favoured slightly over Rhaenyra, as despite Orwyle getting issued a yellow card by the referee and being removed from Allicent's list of allies, she is able to turn Mysaria away from Rhaenyra during an honest discussion where Rhaenyra talks about wanting to look at the moon, which is just plain lunacy. It's worth noting that this is an inversion of the earlier dishonest conversation that took place as Rhaenyra was continuing to refuse Mew tea. This pivot from Allicent speaks to her accumulated wisdom and experience that Otto came to respect. In a way, the cogs of her actions are interlaced with Rhaenyra's desperate seeking of hope in the Sept. Allicent disrupts her Met Gala ensemble when she gives up her iconic necklace of the seven-pointed stars, the thing she has always used to set herself apart from the Valyrian ways, and she gains a more sympathetic Mysaria. Rhaenyra spins the other way and humbles herself by associating more with the religion that Allicent's surrendered jewellery evoked, and turns closer towards Daemon, and the only thing Westeros's powder keg of a power couple get is an informant, who gives them a scrap of information on who funds the Gold Cloak killings. Daemon evoking the sounds of the Sept being unnerving to Rhaenyra loops back to the start of the episode, where Alice Rivers threatens the men who come in search of Aemond. I find the sound design in both incredibly pleasing and would rub my nipples to the ambient screams again, but I wouldn't get anything done. But I do have to say it's not too excessive while still communicating the atmosphere of these grand places. Both locations are heavily linked to a time before the Targaryen dynasty and are in the estates because of the Targaryens. Harrenhal was of course burned by Aegon the Conqueror like he was participating in the Great Westerosi Bake-Off, but that same man and his successors, excluding Maegor, permitted seps in King's Landing, even if they were not partaking in that dank incense. It's charming that Aemond feels naked without Vhagar as he fearfully speaks of his relationship with Aegon and Allicent. And who wouldn't when she's the largest dragon of that era? While Syrax is smaller and perhaps the less significant prestige exposes Rhaenyra's paranoia, we haven't seen Aemond step into a sept to compare and contrast how both of these Targaryen supremacists, both dragon rider claimants, speak of right to rule either through supposedly divine symbols such as the dragon seeds or pure, unadulterated power. I suppose, given Daemon is what Aemond would evolve into if he was a Pokemon, the writers may have decided to pair him up with Rhaenyra as a proxy. As Allicent points out, Daemon is also an interesting proxy for Rhaenyra's crueler side. Him calling out Rhaenyra for sending Sir Luther against the Vandals and saying that she needn't send him at all shows that not only has little changed in how she authorizes acts of evil, his response can change. Unlike the Night of Cheese and Crackers, where he didn't mind the request, this time he confronts her that even he wouldn't have deemed to act in any capacity. While I can empathise with Rhaenyra and it's hardly executing 100 rat catches, she certainly is foolish to petulantly make a similar mistake her half-brother became rightly infamous for. And it's nice to see that Daemon doesn't recognise the strategic point, much like I don't recognise the empty beer bottles strewn across my desk. and disavows his sadistic, roguish ways from the scenario and applies them to cleaning up her mess, as he believes the murders of the Gold Cloaks would be harder to commit before the assaulting of the common folk. While Daemon is eventually able to discover Ormund is behind the scheme after his inspiring speech, it is too little, too late, and the techniques Mysaria Martell used that Ormund admires of using guile to slit the throats of men who occupy your land prove too effective. The well has been poisoned. Speaking of Ormund's reciting of history, while he reveres Mysaria and their tenacity, he slips in admitting he thinks his ancestors were wrong to aid the failed Targaryen attempt at conquest. Yeah, Ormund, me too. I look back at the Battle of Waterloo and shake my head and laugh at the folly of any possible ancestors I had who helped Napoleon. Gift of hindsight aside, if his ancestors refused during that era, it would be treason, as Aegon the Conqueror started with a few foot soldiers, but amassed a surviving defeated ones who were given no choice to be neutral as he expanded his realm. This ties into the treason of declaring Daeron when Aemond is still at large. The folly of this is underscored by Daeron defeating him, symbolically treating Ormund wrong for forgetting his station. Been there, brother. One time I was on a train in London and I forgot my station and I ended up in Cambridge. Despite Daeron claiming he won due to luck, there's a couple of points that can be interpreted as Daeron calculating how to win and even smirking slightly, before hiding his tactics by making eye contact. Ormund refuses to admit he worships Mysaria when asked if she is a hero or a villain, but to his credit, one man's hero being another man's villain is the thesis of the show, if not the world. Him reciting part of House Martell's vow as being unbent sets up Christon Cole's resolve when Christon admits to Gwaine that he will die clear-eyed and unbent. Given this particular episode has the woven tapestry of ideas that link well together as the tides turn, it seems that Christon is an unstoppable force of self-destruction at this point, tragically feeling the cost and inertia of pursuing a life of heroism as the political landscape changes underneath him again and again. He's a brutal man, fueled by ugly emotions, but the desire to be glorious that was present in him before he betrayed his vows persists. I think that need for glory is why he favoured Aemond as a pupil over Aegon, because he recognises the thirst they both share. Aegon complains about how much of a protege Aemond was, and Larys takes off the kid gloves to give him a dose of reality. The show has never shied away from remarking on the commonality between burned Aegon and Larys. Unlike me, avoiding my responsibilities. But it's good how it's highlighted this episode, as despite how disgusting Larys is, he is a man who has seen how the world treats his disability, and made himself indispensable, probably despite the system that pretends it's better than him. Larys, too, had a brother that was his physical better, but he didn't resign himself to whorehouses and sycophants or pity parties over how he will not suppress his brother's physical prowess. I don't think that the moral of the story is that Larys is a good man. However, as a second son of a family that cannot afford restoring the enormous castle they maintain, he is but one example from the show that has a cavalcade of those who demonstrate the tenacity required to rise above their station outside of houses Targaryen, Valyrian, and Hightower, and there are actual kind, righteous people among them. I think that's what spoke to me about Adam and Baela speaking to each other about the paths they have before them, and Adam, despite being a bastard, is quick to say he is not the only one who also wishes to prove themselves. There is great irony in Baela being of Targaryen and Valyrian blood as they discuss such things. She is right, that being a reminder of Jace's death and her bastard uncle being Corlys's newly intended heir has relegated her to be discarded to have sons of a lesser lord once peace is restored, and that even being of great pedigree does not protect her. Baela talking about her being queen one day speaks to the tragic ache of being on the too common reality of being close to the cusp of your potential that her grandmother felt. Personally, I don't remember if I've ever felt a connection to my grandmother who had memory loss. These two self-styled heroes willing to serve the realm and prove their worth and dream of adventure once the war has ended stand in the footprint of Vhagar, and closer to the end of the episode, Christon Cole stands in exactly the same place and considers how small it feels to be someone who has strived to do so, who has daydreamed of fleeing to Essos and leaving the things that pain him behind. It is a potent reminder of how every single person who aspires to have songs sung of them and be a hero, much like how most people in every society have felt, even if it is in pursuits beyond warfare or governance. It is an immutable reality and not dismal, just something that everyone reckons with at least once in their lifetime. But yeah, that's what I liked and thoughts I had from the episode. There was a lot that happened despite most of that being a transitional story that moved pieces around the board so things can escalate next episode before the big events that happen in every season's last two episodes. It definitely could have been a lazier episode for something that is more contemplative, so I liked how there was this shape to it and it had a bit of a fractal nature to it, where you can zoom in and out of the details that link scenes. I had a conversation within the last week that inspired my first fan theory about Game of Thrones stuff that is about the main books, and I haven't seen this theory elsewhere. I'll work a bit on making that over the next 4 weeks to upload when Season 3 ends, so if you want to hear about that, be sure to hit subscribe. Don't go joining groups of skirmishers that are burning bridges before next week, because you never know when your squad walks into cold drops. And then you'll miss when me or other people make videos about next week's episode. Other than that, we'll see how we go next week. Alright, see ya.